activist and journalist Stephen Kefas joining us next on the program. And he's one of the signatories to this document titled Kaduna Victims Coalition. Survivors and families demand full accountability for abuses under Nasir El-Rufai. No more impunity, no more silence. Now, this particular document was signed by Chidi Odinkalu, Audu Maikore, Gloria Balasin, Stephen Kefas, who joins us, and others, about, I think, 7 others who signed, in fact 9 others I should say, who signed this document. So Mr. Kefas, you listed some of the issues that you want there to be a public hearing, a public investigation on. Why now, really? Because some of these things happened some years ago. Is it that now is a great time because you see all of the pressure on him from the government, or what exactly influenced this timing?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for this opportunity. Why now? I don't think we are just starting, because for some of us, we've been consistent on asking for accountability since May 29, 2023. We've been asking questions. We've been calling that, hey, there needs to be some form of hearing on El-Rufai's 8-year stewardship in Kaduna. So, yeah, I think this coalition that came up to put out this statement, it is because we now have a platform. We said, hey, we cannot continue to do this as individuals. Why not we come together as survivors, not victims, survivors of El-Rufai's 8-year brutality, to say, hey, let's ask these questions. There are so many questions unanswered. And I hope and pray that as the conversation continues now, Nigerians will begin to ask this question: what happened to the paramount ruler of the Adara chiefdom, who was abducted and murdered under very controversial circumstances? And some of the things that happened in the chiefdom after his murder speaks volume as to government's involvement. This is not just an allegation. There are evidence to point to the fact that something or someone may have wanted the chief dead, so that policies can change and his chiefdom can be balkanized, like we eventually saw in Kajuru.
There are other cases mentioned. Abubakar Idris, whom we all know as Daddy Yata, who was abducted 2019. In fact, the former governor spoke to that on that interview. So 2019 up until now, almost 7 years now. Also, you mentioned other people in that particular statement. And I want to know, by the way, you mentioned on behalf of ourselves and in solemn memory of those killed or disappeared who cannot speak. Do you have a figure to this? Yes, there are 2 names at least in this statement, but do you have a figure really? Because you said something quite important. You said for those who survived his tenure. Some will say, well, they're just mere allegations. If you're in government, you have enemies, political enemies who don't want you to, attain greater heights. So what kind of evidence and figures, if you can't put numbers to it, do you have?
Okay. My mentor, Ibanga Isime, who is also a journalist, in fact, we are in exile. He was in Ghana, I was in the Gambia. Now, Ibanga had done an investigative story, a 3-part investigative report on the Southern Kaduna killing. And after he published his report, 9 of the people he interviewed died mysteriously. Some of them were community leaders, some of them were local activists, some of them were local vigilante members. They died mysteriously. 9 of them. Ibanga is still alive. So Ibanga had to flee the country for exile. That is how bad it was. And we've moved on. But these people died. The Yata is missing. The Adara chief died. He was murdered. And let me also say this. While in prison myself, I was also a victim of abduction. And I've said it before. I said, the model they used to disappear that Yata was the same model they wanted to use for me. But I was lucky enough to make 1 phone call from police custody. A police woman actually made that call on my behalf using her mobile phone. I think she's retired now. If not for that phone call, nobody would have known what happened to me, because when they abducted me, because there was a warrant, they took possession of my phone and instructed the police station in Okoro, Port Harcourt, that Nobody should see me, nobody should talk to me. So they wanted to do just make sure I'm not seen again, nobody heard about me. But thank God for that phone call. And of course, mine was in May 2019, the Yata was in August 2019, or 4 or 5 months later. So while in prison, I met the suspect that El-Rufai's government claimed to have arrested for the abduction and murder of the Adara chief. They were abducted, they were arrested in November 2018. From November 2018 to May 2023, when El-Rufai left office, those guys were not prosecuted. And in fact, when I got to prison, they were looking better than me, who was coming from outside the prison. That's to tell you that I don't know who was taking care of them, but they were doing very well in prison. They were not, there's no remorse. They were not looking like people who are standing trial for such a great offense. To date, they've not been prosecuted. They've not been prosecuted. But Zidane, a community vigilante member who was protecting and defending his people in Kajuru, was tried and sentenced to death by hanging. So what are we talking about? So I think some of these issues need to be reopened. Some of these cases need to be revisited. Where are the suspects arrested for the murder of the Adara chief? What has happened to them? Why is the trial not going on as it ought to be? And there are many others. Like we said, we have evidence. If Banga is still alive, we have the names of the 9 people he interviewed from his report, who are all dead at this point.
Well, this question about timing is really important too. So, in order to put it in proper context, because people would wonder, why is this group coming up now that it appears as if the former governor is embattled and is having, cases with the federal government? But talk to us about what you believe or your group believes to be the understanding of the former governor's position as far as that Yata is concerned, because that question seems to be haunting him from the time he left office up until now. And in the recent interview that he granted that has now become a subject of contention, he's saying that, look, that Yata was not even a critic of the Kaduna state government at the time. He had issues rather with the Kano state government. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's not true. In October 2020, I went on an investigation into Yata's disappearance. I went to Federal University Dusema, where I interviewed the Arsenal chairman of the institution. I went to Kano, where Yata had traveled to, and some of this information I'm going to say now have not been in public domain. When I went to Katsina, Federal University Dusema, that was where I was told that Yata left that school where he lectured as a lecturer in the linguistic department and traveled to Kano that same day on 2nd of August 2019. When he got to Kano, he told his friend, his very close friend, his childhood friend, that he was coming to Kano, but his friend didn't get to see him. I also interviewed the friend. Sometimes around 9 p.m., he told the friend that he was going to Kaduna. So he left Kano to Kaduna on the same day. And all through the journey, he was on a phone call. But we cannot tell who he was on phone with. He got to Kaduna sometimes around 2 a.m. because of, at that time, the road construction, the Zaria Kano road construction. So I'm sure that may have affected his journey. So he got to Kaduna around 2 a.m. According to his wife, who I interviewed, I also interviewed the mother who died some years ago. His wife said she heard when he got to the compound. He was driving a BMW vehicle. At that moment, through the window, she could see some armed persons who accosted the husband. They took him away alongside his vehicle. Now, but she told me something. She told me that when the husband was taken away, few days later, because that was Ramadan, I think it was, close to Salah, I think, one of the Salah celebrations. She said that she, El-Rufai, brought a ram to the family. I think I've said this on X, and I'm saying it again. The wife is still alive. Some of his family members are still alive. You can verify. He brought a ram to her that is for Salah. And she was wondering, you never like my husband. You guys were not friends. Why are you bringing a ram to my family? And the family unanimously agreed that the ram should be returned to El-Rufai's son who sent the ram. Now, the family, because we were on Twitter when Yata was doing his advocacy, we saw his criticisms on El-Rufai. The reason why El-Rufai said they should point to any tweets when Yata criticizes government was because the Twitter handle is gone. So there's no evidence. You can't revisit there. It's gone. And during my investigation, I also one of the brick walls it hit was that we couldn't obtain the call data record, which would have given us an idea who he was on phone with on that day. Some people called him to come to Kaduna. That is what it means for him to have traveled that late. And a year later, in 2021, Globalcom reissued the line, which is also bad. You have a missing person case that is yet to be closed, and you reissued the line the person was using. And that was how I couldn't continue with that investigation. And then I started getting threats. I had to go on exile and all that. So we believe that the El-Rufai's family, even when you look at Bashir's tweet on 23rd December 2019, you could tell that that family also has question to answer with regards to Yata's disappearance.
So let me come in with two questions in one because of time. First, I listened to what he said. He said, as you've rightly said, he said, go to his page. He was criticizing more of the Kano state government under Ganduje. That wasn't him. That these were his words. He did not know Daddy Yata until after his abduction. He did not know the young man. So I would like you to respond to that. I say he didn't know him at all. So this issue that you just raised now, that's the first thing I want you to respond to. The second part is, what happened with your case so that people have a clear picture of what we're dealing with?
Okay. It is not true that El-Rufai didn't know who Yata was. At least his sons knew Yata. One of his sons took a ram to the wife. The wife is still alive. His family are still alive. They can attest to this because I had this interview with them in Kaduna. Now, so it is not possible for El-Rufai as the governor of Kaduna State to claim he didn't know Yata, a fierce critic of his government then. So that is not true. And of course, like I said earlier, the page no longer exists. So nobody can go there and get some of these things. And maybe if Nigerians have known that a day like this, screenshots of some of Yata's criticisms of El-Rufai would have been taken. So my own case, of course, I was abducted. They had no case against me. They kept me in prison for 6 months, 162 days to be precise. And then we went to court. They kept telling the judge that while I've been in detention, I've been writing articles criticizing El-Rufai's government. And I was wondering, is criticism even a crime? Eventually, they came to court one day and the judge said, do you have evidence with these articles he has been writing in detention? They said no, and she granted me bail. And that was the end of the case. These cases are cooked up not to prosecute, but to persecute. And that is why the moment you make bail, the case died a natural death.
Right. So we wait to see how this will be handled because, I mean, you're quite clear that you will provide testimonies, evidence, and any material assistance to support inquiries and ensure those responsible for crimes face due process in that statement, which you hashtag justice to El-Rufai, justice for Kaduna victims. Where is Yata accountability now? But here's my question to you. This is the same man that was nominated for ministerial appointment until it didn't work out. This is the same man you've seen him with now president, even dancing, having a great time. This is the same man that gave an interview right here on Channels Television that a lot of people said was a master stroke that helped the president's ambition, or at least the president to become now president, right? So this is someone who's been very close to the party in power. Do you trust the government to take this up, knowing fully well that, hey, behind the scenes, they may still be chummy?
Well, that is left to be seen if the government is going to take up some of these issues. But I believe that there is no time that is good enough for people to be held accountable. Accountability is very important in leadership. And of course, yesterday I saw protesters in Kaduna protesting to the State House of Assembly, asking questions as to how he managed the state resources. So I believe that I don't want to believe that he's been persecuted because, like Aldo Mekuni said yesterday, he who must go to equity must go there with a clean hand. So does El-Rufai have clean hands? How has he fared as a governor for 8 years? So these are the issues. So as to whether the government is going to do the needful to ensure prosecution and not persecution, I don't believe he should be persecuted, even though he persecuted some of us. I believe that there are more than enough evidence to try him and to prosecute him according to the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So I don't think the government needs to persecute him. Yeah, he did that to some of us, but we forgive him, we let go. But all we are saying is let there be proper accountability for his 8-year tenure as governor of Kaduna State.
We'll see how things turn out in this justice to, I mean, we've heard justice for, but this one is now justice to El-Rufai. Stephen Kefas, journalist, activist, we have to thank you for sharing your personal experience and some of the work you've done in this build-up. Thank you and wish you the very best.
Thank you.